Christian, in our personal lives, and as well as an woman. So we are going to be exploring those things, asking the very person, is this the end? So I know we may be wondering, okay, what exactly are we talking about? So inshallah, Dr. will be taking us through what exactly it is we be doing. So I would like us to give us full attention. So, Assalamualaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First, I'd like to apologize for coming 1 hour late. I was sleeping. That's just a simple truth. After Subui, I said, it's been rough in the last 4 weeks. I get home like 12 o'clock, sleep at 2, wake up at 4, 5, and then it goes on again. So I apologize. Today's topic, in fact, is also affected by that in the sense that the intention I had was to be able to reel out certain facts and also reference certain people. So, but whatever Allah allows for me to remember and say, I pray that it will be sufficient for us to be tickled enough to understand what is happening. If I take you guys back to 9/11 in 2001, when the attack on the World Trade Towers happened, there was this retired, I can't remember now whether it was a general or an admiral, and I'm still trying to remember his name now. He went to the Pentagon, and one of his juniors that was in the Pentagon, that was like a secretary or so to him, saw him and said, General or Admiral, that do you know that we are going to attack Iraq? We're about to attack Iraq. And then the general said, Iraq. Was it Iraq that was responsible for the bombing of the World Trade Center, the attack of the World Trade Center? He said, no. And he said, so why are we attacking Iraq? He said, well, that's just the memo he got, that we're going to attack Afghanistan, but we're going to attack Iraq. We have decided we're going to attack Iraq. The man said, okay. And then so he left. After some days, he came back again to the Pentagon for a different reason. And that same junior of his now came and said, General, do you know something worse has even happened? General said, what happened? He said, do you know that it's not just Iraq we're going to attack? We're going to attack 7 countries in 5 years. The general said, what? He said, yes, that's what's going to happen. He said, and the memo, he's just received it now. And then the general now said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes. He said, I don't want to see. And he now listed the name of those countries: Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Sudan, Libya, and Iran. And that Iran was going to be the last of the 5. So up until May last year, 6 of those countries had been invaded and attacked. It was only the last one, Iran, that had not been attacked. And then Iran was attacked briefly in June last year by Israel, and then the last 2 days of the 12-day war, America joined by bombing the nuclear sites, and then the recent one that is currently ongoing, where there was a full-fledged bombing by America alongside with Israel. So this is the first thing I want you all to keep in mind, the fact that 7 countries, which happen to be Muslim countries, and which essentially are in that Middle East zone, there was already a decision to bomb them. There was a decision to attack them, to carry war to them. So that's point one. So the question you will then want to ask is why? Now, the second thing is, okay, so currently Iran is being attacked. And it started on February 28th with a joint attack by Israel and America. And the very first thing to do was to, kill the supreme leader along with about 48 other top people in the government, including top scientists and all of that, and then the ongoing war. Now, you see that particular thing, there were assumptions that were made. The assumption, one, was that Iran was very weak at that point in time, and that if they were able to rapidly eliminate the top leader and a few of the top people, because Iran was already that weak, it will be very easy under a week to have toppled the government of Iran, and then they can then put in the kind of people that they wanted. Number three, they also assumed that the people of Iran were not happy with their leadership, and therefore, if they make it easy for them, the people would come out, they would riot, and then to make it easy to overthrow the government. Number four is that it wasn't actually going to be just like that. What really happened was that they already had some people who they were funding, a large number of whom were actually given weapons to stimulate that riot. And that's why, if some of you have heard statements like the American president saying something like, oh, we gave weapons to, you remember that part? We gave weapons to some people, but they saw the weapons were so beautiful. And you know how he speaks? The weapons were so beautiful, they neither used it nor did they return it. You get what I'm saying? Meanwhile, before then, from around January, when they started the build-up, they were saying that the Iranian government killed over 30,000. Some people said they killed over 40,000. And so it was because of that they were going to help the people of Iran. Not stating that they were the ones that actually were stimulating all of these things. So that's another perspective to all of this. And then you would wonder what really is going on. Then number three also is the fact that you would see that while the issue of what's it called now, ceasefire or not, was being discussed at different times. The most recent one, sometime this ongoing shaky 20 or 12-day or 2-week ceasefire, Israel invaded Lebanon again. You see, when you look at all of these events, you start to wonder what really is going on. Then the last thing I want to say for now is that you will also see that while America and Israel were attacking Iran, what did Iran do? Iran started hitting back at Israel, and then all the 6 Gulf countries, all the 6 Gulf countries, in quote, were also being attacked by Iran. And then the natural thing would then be that, what is the business of the Gulf countries with Iran? They are not the one fighting Iran now. It is America and Israel that is fighting Iran. So why is Iran bombing Saudi, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait? Which one is left out of those 6? UAE. So when you bring all of those things together, that will be the nexus of the discussion. But the truth of the matter is that the story actually goes wider than that. but let us just start from that particular area. And I want to say, starting from this last thing I just spoke about, it is true that Iran was sending weapons or missiles and drones to those 6 Gulf countries. But you see, it wasn't the citizens or the people or the property of the Gulf countries that Iran was bombing. They were bombing the US bases in those countries because those bases were actually being used to attack Iran. And in international law, you have a right, once a place is being used to attack you, to defend yourself. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? So the truth is that Iran, by law, has a right to attack those places. So those bases that Iran was attacking, they were United States bases. In fact, for example, take Al Udeid. I think Al Udeid is it in Qatar or can't remember now. It is the biggest Air Force base of the United States outside of the United States. And it has a standing population of 50,000 American servicemen. Okay, I forgot to mention Bahrain too. Bahrain is the biggest location for the US Navy Fifth Fleet, from where many of all those ships and those attacks are coming from. Kuwait has a place, is it Al Farsi or something like that, which is also a big place. And then it's also one of those areas of radars that are being used to monitor not just Iran, but the whole of the Middle East, and also as a forward station for monitoring China and Russia. Which is why you will see that by the first week or second week of that war, what did Iran do? Wiped out those raiders. Second thing is that those raiders also had a second primary role, which was they were the early warning system for Israel. So each time before, when Israel is being attacked, you will see that the Israelis talk about the layered defense system. They talk about the Iron Dome. They talk about the third defense system and the link. You see, the moment anybody fires towards Israel, because of those radar systems that have capacity to detect things as far as 5,000 kilometers away. So they have anything between 5 to 20 minutes warning system from their calculation to be able to tell Israel that so and so weapons are coming. And then they have a response. You will then realize that since sometime last week, that defense time where the government can warn the citizens and say there's missile coming, as far as 9 minutes, 20 minutes, it went to as low as 90 seconds and 60 seconds since the destruction of those radars. And what Iran was doing was that it was doing it stage by stage. It had mapped out what America and Israel does and how they protect them, and without letting them know what it was planning. So he was just attacking those things one stage at a time. Because if he didn't do that, they would have recognized what he was trying to do and they would have protected those systems. So he will go and attack something here and then they will defend that place, not realizing that this is where he's going. So by the time he did that, by the time those people realized what Iran was doing, it was already too late. Are you guys getting where I'm going? So when you now hear the foreign minister of Saudi even stating Quran to kind of like almost call Iranians kufar, and that is that you are looking for it is the Gulf cooperating countries. And in all of these countries, you know what is familiar to all of them? The same thing, the similar thing to all of them. They are all monarchies. They are ruled by kings. And all these kings were created by the British and the Americans. So all these people are just slaves to the America-Israeli system. Are you getting it? Now, unfortunately for these people, they were assuming that, oh, yes, it were creation of the American British, the American, and then they're being forced on their people to the extent that many of them, their security is mostly consisting of Israeli Mossad agents. And they're so terrible on their citizens that you find that they easily hang their citizens. And they find the slightest excuse to kill their citizens. So their security is very tight. If you've never been to those countries, you can't understand. And I remember the example I had in 2010. This one was even Egypt. When I went to Egypt, I used to think Nigeria was a tough country. Egypt is a horrible country. If you're in Cairo, almost every is a secret service agent. So you just don't gather together and talk anyhow. You just disappear. They won't find you. That was during the time of that guy that is dead now. What's his name now? Hosni Mubarak. You get what I'm saying? That's how bad it is. In Cairo, you just see I think I saw policemen in up to 6 different uniforms. There were those wearing white, there's those wearing black, there's those carrying camouflage. Those are the ones you see in uniform. But the ones that are not in uniform are even more than the ones you see in uniform. So it is a police state. And they have to do that because these people know they are not legitimate leaders. So that's why, excuse me, that's why they do all of those. Now, unfortunately for them, they thought that since they knew they were there over their people as by force, the only security they had for themselves was the Israelis and the Americans. So that was the reason why all of them actually invited the American bases, believing that if the Americans are in their countries, the Americans will be able to defend them. So when Iran now started bombing those countries back, they anticipated that America would defend them. They were also usually buying American weapons, all those missiles. You see, each of those interceptor missiles that they are firing to attack, to wipe out those um, Iranian drones and missiles. Do you know how much one of them costs? Can anybody guess? Eh? Each one, 500,000 American dollars. You go. Each interceptor missile costs $2.5 million. And then the Iranian missiles, depending on the quality and how current it is, cost between $50 to $200,000. The older ones that they had as far back as 15, 20 years ago when they started, those are the ones that cost 20, 50, 100,000. But the Koramsha, the Fatah, those ones that, you are an engineer, parabolic, when you fire a missile from point 1 going to point 2, you can track it. You know where it's going to go. It's mathematics, just parabolic math. But that was the missile technology. That was the principle by which they used to use all these interceptor missiles. But then came the hypersonic missiles. The principle behind the hypersonic missile is speed, something that is traveling at 10 times the speed of sound. They even have those ones that are 15 times the speed of sound. That's Mach 15. They will first go up into the atmosphere, beyond the atmosphere. So one of gather, this is where Agotota the kind of like. So they go up into the sky. You would think they are running away. So when they now drop with the pressure of the atmosphere, speed stop and so that itself was a problem. Then they now did something. They now have what they call the dancing missiles. So it didn't follow the parabolic geometry anymore. So when it's now coming, if you calculate your thing by like the thing is here now, you think this is where it's coming, you see it coming like this. As soon as it breaks the atmosphere, guess what happens? It just starts dancing. And so each time you see it like this, you've calculated that it belongs. So I calculate the dB at so time. So you are coming to hit it here. By the time you are here, the thing just goes like this, like this, like this. So even if it's coming here, it has gone dancing around before it comes to strike. So that's why the current missiles that the Iranians are using are very, very terrible and powerful. And the list of them is 750 kilograms of TNT. Not to talk of the one that is even 1 kilo. Well, myself 50, then there's one that's 1 ton. Then I had that there's one that is 2 tons. I haven't really read the details. So that's why the effects of what the Iranians are doing, both to Israel and those um, American bases, is so devastating. But then, of course, Israel has a policy of a military blanket. You are not allowed to film anything. You have to show the Israeli state. If they don't allow it, if you show it, you are going to prison, whether you're a citizen or not. And UAE is also doing the same thing. But there are a lot of people in UAE now that have been locked up. And the reason for this is that, UAE is living on the basis of the tourist center of the world, the financial capital of the world. It's the safest place in the midst of the madness of the Middle East. So you can't talk about bombs coming. People will run away. And people are actually running away. And from the last thing I was studying 2 days ago, they said there's a lot of devastation in the UAE. And as at the time when they were complaining that Iran was attacking civilian centers, those hotels that the Iranians were bombing, what actually happened is that Iran had destroyed the American bases. Those bases cannot be lived in anymore. So those soldiers now ran to the hotels. Do you get what I'm saying? To go and stay in those hotels. But Iranians found out. So you will see a specific hotel, specific floors, because these are precision missiles. Go and bomb those places. Are you getting it? So, and again, in international law, once a civilian area, hotel, hospital, school, church, mosque, they are naturally supposed to be free of attack. But the moment combatants go to those places, people who are fighting, they go and hide there. They are allowed to attack them. Are you getting? So, in case I forgot, that's why I stated that. But I think one other thing I want to say about those Gulf corporate, so they now found out that apparently those bases were not really there to defend them. They were actually there to defend Israel. So much so that they now started running out of those interceptor missiles. And so rather than for America to send interceptor missiles to the Gulf countries, he now took the ones that they were using to defend Taiwan, South Korea in the Pacific, they now took it to Israel. Are you getting what I'm saying? And meanwhile, when America wanted to do this invasion of as he is now with his sword, all of us are surrounded, and then we say it's an aggressor. What is he supposed to feel? We get the point. So that's really the scenario. Now, having said that, we are going to ask a question and say, why really are the Americans and the Israelis attacking Iranians? We hear things like, oh, the Iranians are a very aggressive group of people, they are killing their own people, they are, uh, they are performing a nuclear threat, they are trying trying to block the state of hormones and all of those things. Those are half truths. Are you getting it? The true story is not really totally like that. You will have to go back 47 years for these current people ruling Iran. But the story is also farther than that. The story goes back to 1953. I don't know whether you are following me. The story of Iran in relation to America goes back in the context of the current people, the Islamic Revolution, it goes back to 1979. But in the context of the Iranian nation, in terms of their beef with the Americans, it goes back to 1953. Are you getting the point? In the context of Israel, the story of the problem of Iranians, why the Israelis want to destroy Iran, is not because Iran has any problem with Israel. It is because of the goal of the Israeli state. There's a concept in Israel they call the Greater Israel. If you look at an Israeli soldier, there's a badge on his chest, on his shoulder here, and you see something like a map. And that map has two parts like this, and then there's a space in between. This part of it is like the Middle East. This middle part is where you have the Strait of Hormuz, and then this other last part is part of Egypt and Saudi Arabia. So the Greater Israel concept is from the river to the sea. Do you understand? So from the Euphrates to the what's the name of that other river now? And so is the concept of the promise of God to Abraham, which means that all of that place is supposed to belong to Israel. And for them to have it, that place contains Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, part of Egypt, part of Saudi Arabia, up to Medina. You are surprised. Up to Medina, Jordan. And that's why if you listen to an interview that happened about 2 months ago, where there's a guy called Tucker Carlson, when he went to Jerusalem, and he had an interview with the American ambassador to Israel at the airport. He didn't allow him to go inside. There was a particular question he asked him. He said, this concept of Greater Israel, that what does he think? That's the Tucker Carlson was asking the American ambassador that. What does he think about Israel expanding its borders? And that expansion means that all those areas I spoke to you guys about were going to be involved. He said there are people already living in these places and there are countries. So if you are now saying that God promised those lands to the people of Israel, so what now happens to the people and the countries that are there? So God promised it to them now. And so it doesn't see any big deal in why they cannot take it all. It was when he made that statement, that's an American ambassador. Ideally, in international relations, automatically the American government is supposed to have withdrawn uh, that ambassador. They did not. And they never made any statement to counter what he has said. And once an ambassador makes a statement and his primary government doesn't say anything against it, it is assumed that that is the opinion of that government. So that means the opinion of the American government is that that is all right. And that was now led to Saudi now making that complaint that they made. Are you guys following me to that point? There was something else I was going to say in that context. Like I said, I will miss certain things. And if you maybe remember to ask me, if I remember, I will tell you. So that aspect is like that in regards to microscopy. So now, yeah, so as I was saying, is that the goal of the Israelis in relation to the Iranians is simply because for Israel to achieve their goal of Greater Israel, they needed to dismember each one of all those
the leadership of all those countries. If you look at Syria, you see how they've destroyed Syria. Look at Lebanon. They've been attacking Lebanon since forever. Look at Palestine. Look at which other country. Then all these other ones, all these Saudi, UAE, Oman, these ones are just puppets. One of them is, and you must have heard of what they call the normalization principle, where all of those countries started with UAE in 2020, when they normalized relationship with Israel. And so, because Saudi is supposed to be the biggest of them all and the representative of the Muslim state, so it was only Saudi that was remaining. So as far as they were concerned, they were well on their way to achieving their goal. But there was one last obstruction, and that's what Iran. So they needed to break Iran, because if they don't break Iran, they can't achieve their goal. So do you now understand why this problem is that way? So they cannot afford. So forget about the issue of nuclear weapons. Forget about Iran attacking Israel. All those are all not the point. Initially, they were talking about Iran and nuclear weapons because all of us know that any country that has nuclear weapons, you can attack it. That's why anybody can attack North Korea. That's why anybody can attack Pakistan. Do you get the point? Nobody can attack India because you may shoot them, you may kill them, and all of that. When they send nuclear weapons to you, you are finished. So they call it the principle of mutual assured destruction, MAD. So nobody attacks anybody. In fact, a lot of people in the world are now abusing the Iranians. What kind of foolishness? You know how much these people hate you. You too should have developed your own nuclear weapons. So that's an argument for another day. So initially, the goal of the Israelis was, let's get rid of the nuclear weapons of Iran. But they now discovered, so up until June last year, they thought that was all they needed to do. But they also knew Iran was producing missiles. But their belief was that low quality missiles. And those missiles don't have precision. So, and you see that the June war, that 12-day war, it took about 72 hours before Iran started attacking back. And what happened then was simply because they immediately eliminated the top leaders of the Iranian military. So it took some time before the Iranians gathered themselves together. And it is the lessons that the Iranians learned from that led to what the Iranians are doing now. Which is why you see that within 4 hours of the bombing of the leader in February 28th, what happened? 550 missiles were released by Iran because of the lessons they have learned. Another lesson the Iranians also learned from the June thing was they have a principle now. They don't have a centralized command. You see, before the supreme leader died, he had actually broken military leadership into sectors, and each one of them already has its orders. And so the order is that once you hear, once you cannot communicate with the central leadership anymore, these are your targets. Just keep attacking. So you are not waiting for any order that, my general is going. If you cannot establish contact, these are the places you attack. So that's why it's also been difficult. So they call it, there's a doctrine for it in the military. So the only thing that can stop you is the higher level people getting across to you. Once you cannot, it's not like if you don't do what you have been told to do, it's the last order. If you don't do it, then you can be court martialed, that kind of a thing. So when the Iranians now started attacking back, the Israelis now realized that they made a mistake, that the missiles of the Iranians are even more dangerous than the nuclear weapon we're talking about, which is the reason why they now added the concept of no, it's no more just nuclear weapon. We want the Iranians to stop doing. We even want to get rid of all their missiles. Because the truth is that for those who know, they say that a lot of destruction has happened in Israel based on those missiles. But because the Israelis are hiding it, nobody really knows how bad that is. So that area, therefore, is that the reason. Okay, there is another thing I want to say. You will hear all of the things that the Americans say, like this guy called Peter Exet, the Secretary for War, which used to be Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War. What you guys don't know is that Peter Exet is used to be what you call a newscaster, a journalist. He used to work for Fox News. He was never a politician. He was troublesome. He was a right wing and all of that. And then he has some tattoos on him. Ah, huh? Sorry, that's what I can't remember. Like without, yes, I didn't want to say that. I was focusing on the tattoo. One of the tattoos out of like, is it 666 or there was a tattoo he had that was saying something relating to the Armageddon concept. I just hope I'll remember. So anybody who sees that tattoo will know that no sane government will have made somebody like that, even a local government councillor, not to talk of him now being in charge of the defense of the most powerful country in the world. So what therefore we then saw happening is that the Iranians, because of what America has done to them as a people, there is a common statement in America, in Iran, when they are frustrated with anything, like for example, now maybe what's the commonest irritation in Nigeria to anybody? NEPA. So the way we used to show our frustration about NEPA in this country, was NEPA. Is that not? Then some children are say, oh, NEPA, we need that point, that kind of thing. In Iran, that's not what they say. What they say in Iran is that debts to NEPA. It's not as if they want to kill NEPA, but that is how they express their frustration. Like Hausa people, when they want to express the depth of their frustration or anger, what they used to say, shady, shady. That one is shady. So that's why even when they say very beautiful girl, they say shady, when they have to kill. So if you just use the word shady, you think it's abusing the woman, but that shady is like, oh my God, right there. Are you getting it? So when you now find something like Peter Exet and the American president, when they want to find excuses, then they send it to Ted Cruz, the Texan guy. When they want to find excuse for fighting Iran, they will say, oh, the Iranians are always saying death to America. Do you guys now get the point? So you need to get some of these things to be able to understand the lies that these people make. Now, so I will take you back to 1979. In 1979, the Iranian students, after the Iranian Revolution, they discovered that the American embassy in Iran was actually a CIA spy center. You understand? So that's why they overran that place. And they were able to keep about 56 or 44 and 56 American diplomats. They were able to keep them as what do you call it now, hostages for about 440 something days. As at that time was Jimmy Carter that was the American president. And then they tried to actually rescue those. There were these three Apache helicopters that came from the desert of Tabriz. But Allah did something. There was a sandstorm that destroyed those three. I knew this story as far back as 1985 when I was in university. Then, MSS, we were into MSS. So these were already northern MSS. We had a relationship with the Iranian embassy at that time, those sorts of things. And to the point that people were saying that Imam Khomeini, as at that time, was in his place and was doing dua. And he knew that this thing, whether it's true or not, is different. But at that time, it's good for us. We were young boys, 18, 19, 20, and we're, religious zealotry and all of that. So what we were told was that Imam Khomeini was praying in the middle of the night and he noticed that these people were about to attack and he started praying. Then Allah created a sandstorm. till today, the Americans don't know what happened. The sandstorm just came just like that and destroyed. So that's why that attempt to rescue them failed. 26 years, I don't know, 46 years to that time, another incident happened. That's the one about the F-15 jet that was shot down by Iran. Two pilots, one the same thing within hours, and then the other one took another 3 days. Now, what you guys don't know is that there was also another attempt by America. What they said was that they wanted to save that second pilot. But we're now hearing that that was not really what happened. The pilot was just an excuse. There was actually a Delta Force with a Team 6 special ops unit to actually go and steal the uranium of the Iranians. So they sent two Hercules C-30 planes. Those are their transport planes. But not the simple Hercules of Nigeria here. These ones are even more powerful. And then about 5 Apache helicopters, then some A-10 super jets. Then it's like a war. Do you know eventually? Jump and say something, and we can come back to where we stop. Somebody should just remind me. Because I want to say this part because it is important for me to say this. It has to do with somebody should remind me. I will continue after prayers, but this part I want to quickly say. People have said things that the majority of the Muslim population should not bother themselves about the Iranians simply because they are Shia and that the Shia they are how do they put it that they are either they are not Muslims. They call them the Rawafis or something like that. It is really interesting. But I will just quote one verse of the Quran and then you now realize it has nothing to do with the idea of whether they are Muslim or not Muslim. Because I think I'm not sure now whether that's whether it's in Tauba or something. It says, wala do not let your hatred for people make you anshana anin qawmin Allah taqdilu. Ihdilu wa aqrabu taqwa. Do not let your hatred or your dislike or your anger at a people prevent you. ولا يزلمون شنعان قوم ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. Whether whether I like any one of you here or not, whether I hate any one of you here or not, as a Muslim, you have a thank you, Quran. Your business is about justice. Justice is the closest thing to piety. I think all of us here know who started this war. Yes or no? Who started this Israel America war versus Iran? Who started it? So who is guilty? Who is unjust? Who is unjust? So does that have anything now to do with whether the Iranians are Muslim or not Muslim? Do you get what I'm saying? So you have to quickly establish that fact. Again, just so that you will understand, a few days ago, was it the Iranian Prime Minister, one of the top ministers, somebody was asking him about this issue of Iran and Israel. He said, in the media war, how do you, whose story do you think is going to be told? He said, Israel, America, over, is it for sources of media propaganda? It's like Yoruba people, right? Who are you going to call to solve the problem? Is it not after what has happened? Usually they will ask the young one to tell the story, Abi. The young one will tell the story. Then when they now call the elderly one to come and tell the story, in Yoruba land, I want everyone to tell me, what do you think the elderly person will say? Tó bá sọ pé kápẹ́ àgbàlagbà yẹn kó wá rojọ́, kí ló máa sọ? Àwọn tó máa judge case yẹn àgbàlagbà bíi tiẹ̀ ni. Òun tó ti kọ́ kí correct. Simple to know how to show much the respect. That's all the elderly man will say. Mo parọ́ àbí mi ò parọ́? And it really says that kí ẹni tó àwọn àgbàlagbà yìí kò máa sọ. Ẹ̀sẹ̀ ọmọdé kò yẹ mi yóò kò ní respect àwa náà nìyẹn. Are you getting? because the father was a CIA station. And then the Iranians had overthrown the Shah. Now, the Shah was there for between 1953 and 1979. That's about 24, 25 years. You see, before the Shah's father was actually the Shah. And he was overthrown from the when the people actually rose against his own father around 1951. And then the Iranians now did the best democratic election around that time and appointed a man called Mohammed Mossadegh as the prime minister in 1951. That is one of the best things that ever happened to Iran. But in 1953, okay, when he now became the prime minister, what really happened was British petroleum actually as far back as 1890 something or 1880 something had discovered Iranian oil, which was what they actually used to form the First World War. For that oil, they were giving very stupid amount of money to the Iranians. They were just taking their oil. So Mossadegh in 1953 nationalized that oil and made it National Oil Corporation for Iran. So it was because of that the British now went to meet the Americans because at that time Britain was already weak. They were just coming out of the Second World War. They invited the Iranians to help the Americans to help them overthrow the government of Mohammed Mossadegh. And so there was one British and there was an American guy, American CIA agent, I'm forgetting his name now. He came with a box of money, a lot of dollars, and there was a secret code name for the project. It was called Project Ajax, AJAX, which was used to cause destabilization. So that's why we need to be careful as a people when you say when you see some people, if you remember the American guy recently, Thomas Liebeck, that was sent back, that went to Jos and was now inciting people against the Muslims. Do you know that two Muslims were killed that day because of what that guy was saying? And you see, actually, the people doing us are not, they're not doing their job. Somebody like that should never have been sent away. He should have just been locked up. For like 10 years, they just now locking up somewhere through it. Then after 10 years, to see whether he has repented. Because what he has committed is murder. And it's not even just murder of those two people. More people would have easily been killed. I don't think any Nigerian can go to America or any other country and do and say what that guy has done. And there are too many things wrong with that guy too, for us to know that this is not just normal. This guy was a SEAL. This guy was a soldier for America. And he now comes under Christianity, Anyway, what I was just trying to bring out is that, which is also the argument by the Sunni scholars. Again, one of the things I also found out is that we also should be careful when we are speaking to the fatwa that are passed by our scholars. If you don't have a grounding of knowledge up to a point, just be careful. You may say that you have reservations about a certain fatwa, but don't say what nonsense is that, what rubbish is that. Kill them. And I've said it to some of us who are close here that I didn't start out this aspect of my life of understanding geopolitics. I never set out. I was just being myself. See this one, read this one, watch this one. And all of a sudden I realized I knew so much. But you know that the more I knew, I didn't know. When you think you have reached, it's like onion. When you have peeled off, you think you have reached the end of it. Clear to body, another one. The about to peel it off, another one. That's actually what this thing is. So with these things about the scholars, you see, there's something you call conservatism with the scholars. So Sunni scholars, and then about the Shia people, but some Sunni scholars were like, when they make some fatwa, it's not because they were being they are being supported or they are supporting the government. They're actually very careful about passing any judgment that can cause difficulty for the simplest Muslim. Do you get what I'm saying? The problem comes from those scholars who are government scholars, or who are being paid by government, or who are defending government. But wallahi, I'm coming to realize that there's a significant number of scholars that their fear of harm. For example, remember that is it the ayah or hadith that speaks to the idea, and there's a verse of the Quran that says, when they do tafsir on Allah, that said that that you should obey Allah and His Messenger, and those who are appointed as. You understand? It's a verse of the Quran, and then you now find several scholars trying to translate it or do tafsir, and then when you now start studying those scholars, until you go back and back and back to look at the origin or the scholarship of that scholar or who is funding that scholar, you now start to understand why they are passing their fatwa. Are you getting it? The Saudi people and the Kuwaiti people and the people in the Gulf cooperating countries, they will tell you that what that thing is saying is that it doesn't matter what your leaders do, just obey. Because of that issue of how those leaders are there. Are you getting what I mean? So we really need to be very careful about some of all these things that, let us be safe and be in the group. But when we hear things that we don't know, and they say so, it's like me now, attacking Gumi or attacking my father-in-law. I mean, they never formed that I don't know Quran from top of head. And then what do I do that I'll start talking about those people? Or even that guy in Agege there, however much he has been controversial, you cannot dispute his scholarship. So if you hear he has said certain things and you're uncomfortable about it, just say that you they hear you, but don't say what rubbish. Go and meet people to explain to you. But don't say rubbish, because at the end of the day, you are probably the rubbish fellow. And there are reasons. I can give you stories in the past of different scholars. Take, for example, was it Imam Ahmad or which one of them that died in the prison? He preferred to stay in prison. Either it was Ahmad or what's the name of those scholars. When you read their story, you now understand why they said the things they said and did the things they did. Or look at Yusuf when he had that problem with the Aziz wife. What did Yusuf say in the Quran? Oh Lord, the prison is better for me than that which they call me to. And then when the Mufassir were now translating what Yusuf said, after a number of years, he was not telling Allah, why did you leave me in the prison now? What did Allah tell you? According to the Mufassir, and I answered your prayer. I don't know whether you guys are getting. So for us as Muslims, let us be very, very careful. Let us be very, very, very careful. The symbols are there that we should all follow. But when it comes to explaining things that are beyond us, so going back to what I'm saying, so the Iranians really are not happy with the Americans because of what the Americans have done to them through Mossadegh. So so the Shah's father was ruling before Mossadegh took over. Then the Shah ran away. Then the Americans and the brought him back. Americans and British brought this current Shah. The Shah now had what they call a secret organization, a secret police called the Sabak. Over 300,000 Iranians disappeared. That man was vicious. But when they now overthrew the same man in 1979, the man died, I think maybe 18 months later or how many years later. I can't remember which country it is he died. And then they started painting a very good image of him in America, in Britain, and all that. Now his own son is the one that is now telling Iranians to rise and attack their leadership. This useless man that doesn't have anything that they have done for the people. Are you guys getting the thing? So we need to be very, 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 very careful. And if you also look at it in the context of even our own Nigeria, you guys remember the NSAS, Abi? It is those people whose families died in NSAS that will be able to know that whether they died for nothing or they died for something. And for us as Muslims, we need to be very careful because I would want to conclude along something that I'm going to suggest that we should look. So that's just the issue. Iranians are not happy with Americans, not because they hate Americans. In fact, they don't have anything against this ordinary American citizen. It is the American government because of the policy of the American government. Now, the want of the Israelis, why are the Israelis against Iranians? I've told you, it's just simply because of the concept of greater Israel. And they realize that they cannot achieve that because the only power left in the Middle East that is preventing them is Iran. So they must break up Iran. So it's an all or none thing. Iranians cannot tell the Israelis, but no. The only language the Israelis understand is destroy everybody else to get what they want. They don't care who you are. They will destroy even America. USS Liberty 1967, when the Israelis wanted to make America go to war against Egypt, do you know what they did? They attacked American spy ship, USS Liberty 1967, and 37 American soldiers, sailors were killed. That's how bad the Israelis are. There's nobody Israel cannot attack. Nobody, as in capital, nobody, to achieve whatever they are. Israel is the only country in this current world where we have countries. It's the only country that doesn't have fixed borders. Are you guys aware of that? It is the only country that doesn't have borders. It's just like Nigeria now. Next door to us is Benin, and after that is Togo, isn't it? Now imagine if we say, "Oh no, there's no border," and then next tomorrow we just overrun what's their capital? The capital of Benin there, Cotonou. You know, I mean, will those people feel comfortable with us? So that already shows you the intention. Why are we afraid of cancer cells? They don't have borders. So Israel is a cancer to the world. So you guys need to understand these things to be able to. Now, let me now make it even more complicated for you before I forget this part. There's a difference between Jews and the state of Israel. And then even within the Jews, there's a difference between the ordinary Jew and the Zionist Jew. And then there's a difference between the Zionist Jew and within the Zionists, those who are dictating the agenda. That is the one you now relate to the concept of the question that people are asking about the end times. You will know that there are some people in this matter that are talking about the issue of Armageddon according to the Christians, the issue of the Malahama according to the Muslims, then the issue of the Kabbalah, and the issue of what's it called? All this worship of and then the Epstein files and the Baal worship. Are you guys getting it? So that is why they all link. With the Americans, the only problem Americans have with Israel is with Iran is oil. All the wars America has fought is oil and dominating the world. That's all. So the only thing America wants from Iran, if today now Iran just says, okay, just take the oil, well, Americans have no problem with that. It's just oil and domination. But Israel, no. What Israel wants is greater Israel, and from greater Israel, they will determine what happens in Middle East. And because of the situation and the nature of Middle East, they will have economic control of the world. They will have financial control of the world, and then that's their Kabbalistic concept and Baal worship. But most people don't know. Even majority of Jews don't know. Are you guys getting that aspect? So you can ask whatever question you want to ask from that. Now, rounding up because of time, you will then ask me that, okay, so what should be the position of you and I in all of this? Number one is that the first thing is what we're already doing. We must inform ourselves what is happening. Because Yorubas are saying, they say, ẹni tí ò bá mọ̀nà kí ló máa ṣe, ó máa ń béèrè ọ̀nà. Ẹni tó bá wà lọ́nà tó béèrè lọ́wọ́ ẹgbẹ́ ẹjọ́, mo máa ti ṣìnà mi mọ́ ibi tí mò ń lọ. What you ask ni pé mo lò ń lọ. And you now say you don't know. What did the Yoruba people will tell you? What did they before? Anywhere is you know. Since you don't know where you're going, so anywhere you go is where you go. So the first thing is that we must inform ourselves. Are you getting the point? So whether it's in an occasion like this or individually reading or going to other groups, you must inform yourself properly. Second again is that you must increase your closeness and attachment to your Lord. Because the truth of the matter is that from all those other things are rapidly said, we are all going to be at different stages of the dynamics of this matter, of those within our control, of those within our understanding, of those which is beyond us. And since we don't know at which level we are going to be at, the only thing that can protect any one of us is our preparedness. And that's in the context of how close we are to Allah. So that whether you actually know what is happening at whatever stage, you are protected. Because your relationship with Allah is not about you being the president of Nigeria or the governor of Qatar or anything. It's about Ya Ayat Anasu Masma'ina Irdi Ila Rabbi Kirodi Atamardiya. It only is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Once you have that association with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have that firm thing, Allah will then decide if Allah will buy it. Or Allah will then decide, okay, I think Allah I'll buy it. Or just like the Prophet used to do that time, he used to tell his companions, he said, I warn you about the Dajjal. I warn you about the Dajjal. I warn you about the Dajjal. To the point that the companion said, so what are we going to do? The Prophet said, for as long as I'm with you, you are safe. But when I am away from you, you must strengthen yourself and get as close to your Lord as possible. Whatever is then the outcome doesn't bother you, because whether you are dying a rich man or you are dying a poor man, what is important is what is your final outcome. Is Allah pleased with you when you die? Are you receiving your good on the right hand, on the left hand? This is so important. But it is so important that is how, I've done so many things, but that is what each one of us needs to do. So like I said, one, we must inform ourselves. Two, we must get closer to our Lord. And then there's a third one that I actually forgot. I think it has to do with also passing the information we have to our, remember that what's that verse in the Quran when Allah was sending the prophet to now start preaching? He said, and we tell you to recite this to those who are close to you. So we owe it to our family members, we owe it to our friends, we owe it to people close to us to let them know what we know and just prime them. So whatever will be the final outcome. Because why am I saying this? The final outcome in our own time may just be that this war stops now. It may come back in another 6 months, in another 6 years, in another 60 years. That's how it is. The final outcome may even be a World War III. The final outcome may even be obliteration of the state of Israel. That's not within the power of each one of us. But what is within the power of each and every one of us are those three things that I have said. And when you have that knowledge, you are at peace with yourself. So you are not worried. You say, oh, Muslims are something. You will not your business. I have told you about scholars now. They were beheaded. Still our scholar, and these are people with all their knowledge, yet they were beheaded. Because that was what Allah destined was going to happen to them. But the one that was within their own purview, where they had power to do anything, they did. And that's what it is for me and for you. You get what I'm saying? And I'm sure I've skipped out a lot of things. I've missed out a lot of things. But I needed to do that. It's like, okay, that reminds me, there were these verses in the Quran I wanted to quote. Allah said, okay, this first one, where, despondency, we all know what happened to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, how bad it is, what is happening currently in Lebanon, even though, alhamdulillah, the Hezbollah showed prepared to the Israelis. I don't know whether some of you know. There was a particular day that 350 IDF soldiers were killed. There was a particular day when over 24 Merkava camps were destroyed. Those, those Hezbollah guys and those Palestinians, those guys, those guys, may Allah bless them. May Allah help them. You see this my tasbih that I'm always carrying around. Only Allah knows how many days, how many times I am always praying for them. Allah wants to go in Palestine, Syria, Iran, on and on. Because what can I do? These guys, they've lost families. There are total generations that were wiped out in Lebanon, wiped out in Palestine. Our poor people, they are so evil. So there's this verse that Allah says, "Wala ta'khinu, wala tahzanu, wa antum alawna in kuntum mu'minin." This one is meant for when we feel so despondent, if we don't have any power. Every time those things are just they're just killing us, they're just jailing. Even in the same Nigeria, Allah said, "Do not be despondent. Do not be grieved. Wa antum alawna." You are the ones that will be successful. But there's a caveat. In kuntum mu'minin. You have to believe it. And that is what keeps the Palestinians going. You know how much destruction has happened in Palestine? In fact, everything is destroyed except that's how it is. The default mode is that everything in Palestine is destroyed. And I remember early in that place, there was one Palestinian young man. He heard that his brother had just been bombed. So he ran to the airport, to the hospital, and he saw the brother, and the brother died. So he just went, prayed for the brother, and then started laughing and started shouting, "Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, oh my brother, how successful you are. So Allah has blessed you. You are now in Mataya. Oh Allah, don't forget me." Can anyone else do that? To pray for your brother, for my people to be Mataya, for what we shall do, for my daddy. Typically, what are you going to do? Oh my Lord, Sasabia, Sabu. But that's what he did. He was praying for his brother, thanking Allah that his brother was that successful, and reminding Allah, "Hey, we know how you." That is how wala tahinu, wala tahzanu, wa antum alawna in kuntum mu'minin. And then again, before we now start thinking, wala ipo, wala tahzanu, wala tahzanu, Allah will not give to anybody what is beyond himself. And lastly, says, "La yukallifu nafsan illa wus'aha." So if we look at these verses, we will now see that wala could see kokofwa, akoshe titiwa, ibi tagbara wa babo, ká sọ fúnra wa, ká rán ara wa létí, ká súnmọ́ Ọlọ́run ọba, ká rán àwọn ẹbí wa létí, ká dẹ̀ máa ṣàdúrà fáwọn tí Ọlọ́run fi síwájú. May Allah make it easy for you. If you have questions on things that I've skipped because of time or because of memory, whatever I remember, I'll be able to say. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. We get from giving us this opportunity to learn our own.
Ẹ̀yin fídíò mi ò mọ̀ pa inú ìgbà yẹn. Tó bá mọ̀ wọ́n jẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀.
Let's read the questions very simply. Mine is how do we let us know about what the law is? Mainly, we don't implement. So we are simple answers mainly about politics, about politics, even about Islam. We just prepare, some just pray, some don't even pray. Those are another category. Another category are those people who are like
Muslim brotherhoods in all these in Togo, the everything they do in other culture. Still wondering with that. And some of these are affecting us. Second question is, how do we relate this, or what can you say about the Bosnia and Srebrenica? Is it related to
Srebrenica.
Srebrenica? So is it related to all part of these conspiracies? So I know that the SARS, some were figuring them, I think they were the community trying to cause a massacre in 1995. 1990s to 1995. So thank you, sir.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
It's more about it was situated within like an American rise on protests and not play the movie to pass. Similarly, happened in Iran before this one. That's a protest in Iran. That protest was pushed. Before we sit down, the king coming. Even though it was time, the meeting linked between these two. One was saying, what to do? Basically, there is every meeting in Islam. And what's that to be that the goal of that every meeting not be after this going or as the last is today done without any meeting. That's that. The second one, like what you said in the last conclusion, you told us that you are just doing everything and discover become an expert. Not everybody can do that. And like I said, today we maintain today. Your show is like what? If you are one of them, everybody is doing a country. And they are saying only the same thing. And there are so many people who do like I said. How do we strategize to make sure that there is somebody who wants to know this can go? Because if they are doing it, it just continue like that. We need to strategize and say, what do we do? Is that way we can influence curriculum? And there are people who think about this is on models. Because of somewhere, if I want to know about this, I should do it. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
What my question is, how much awareness are we giving to themselves about the data and the sensing and rotary blood, all these drugs? So we tell you it's not everything. And then they are assisting people by building hospital, and they are also people who are educated. And people who serve them in that way. You will see the ladies of girls that serve them pretty decades. In fact, so sometimes you don't want to do that. So an Muslim should be elected as chairman of president of the platform, president of the club, president of this club. What effort are we making to let our people know that is very, very important? Understand? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Two questions. Very first one, can you say that intelligence is failed Iran by Russia and America taking out the top level
Leader.
from the two leader lawyers that were killed? That is one. The second one is, if this goes to a physical version, as I read our people from CIA, former CIA, say if America stepped on the Iranian soil, that will not have in the movie part, will not far because of the terrain of the Iranians. But I remember that early 80s, when America backed Iraq against Iran for 10 years, almost 10 years, and they're going to go back. And honestly, I think the Gulf or the Arab, they are not sincere with themselves. Because if they are sincere, we allow America to have military bases
attending the confrontation. These are the groups that are being used against Iran as well. I remember that the same scenario played out where Russia and Ukraine. For me too, I was support Russia because you can't use your post. Once you join NATO, that means that you'll be able to really mount attack against what we call it. So, by my own understanding, because when the two leaders just came out recently, the particular president was very angry, and I mean, you need to know to be like the first security of countries and the security council, they have not done enough. Even as yesterday, the Turkish Prime Minister, Erdogan, had a rally and
President.
president. So, and for me, I'll give it to the Hamas and the Hezbollah. Because America will always tell people that the Hamas and the people and terror. And by my own understanding, for what everybody is saying now, who is the terror? And that's why even the government is wanting to bring the people of job. Nobody wants war. But the way Americans and these bastard Trump, because at least because of the problem. And see where the world is going now. Everybody is having the problem. Even Nigeria, we can help them. So if the world will be a better place, America and Europe must come together and understand that we can live with the neighbors without all this war. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
My question goes on that in the course of your lecture, you talked about the Israeli having the belief that the Gulf nation or the Arab land belongs to them. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the question now is how evident can that be? Then, secondly, let me come back to my own country. Because just like some countries have been mentioned as a target, it seems Nigeria will still fall into that category. As a result of the insecurity in the north, of which the West wants to take advantage of it, to come in full. It's a gradual thing. Probably after Iran, maybe they will go to Turkey or Pakistan, somewhere else before coming to Nigeria because of the interest of the oil, using an excuse to come in. Then lastly, the issue of, I know this is out of this topic, but it's also a concern for the Ummah. Just a few days ago, and it has happened before, our sisters go to jam and their hijab will be thrown out of their head. Human rights, their girls are naked, it is their right. Our girls are covered, it is not their right. But we know something for sure. If this happens in the north, it cannot even happen in the north to remove a hijab from the lady's head in the north. It will not happen. And if it happens, we all know what they come up. But then in the West, unfortunately, it is even, it's getting worse. It's really getting worse. I'm just saying, let me just draw this to attention. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
I have two questions. I think the first question is more of an observation than any other thing. And I'm going to say this because the anchor of the program is not only able, and I think it works a lot. I've discovered that, we seem to pay more attention to the Arab countries, to the detriment of other Muslims in the world. Because as Muslims, our concern should be for each and every Muslim, not for selected Muslims. And I think that's why we don't begin gradually, we don't popularize it. In India and China, Muslims are really even persecuted by their leaders. And we don't seem to do much on that. I don't know for that, even in China, they seem to have this, I don't know what it is, but I don't. But they even have this concentration camp where they put in Muslims and they are forbidden from using the Quran for doing Quranic activities. Also, some Muslim girls actively through that, but all that's what I'm reading, that they are being forbidden from getting married to Muslim men, and they are being taken out of the Muslim society into other. I think they have a caste system that they where Muslims are not permitted to marry Muslims, but they should go into other caste system. But the way you guys be talking, you are not allowed to eat a cat. They are saying a cow is like the limit for the nobles, and there's even a rumor, not even a correct or accurate fact that maybe you started on the cow or something, you get killed because of it. So I feel that as Muslims, we should do more for probably not equally, but I mean, like 2, 3 years ago, there were some people that were living in Turkey. And Turkey, let's say being a Muslim country, and then extradited back. Because you need to be aware by this topic, you don't know that behind the religion, there is a fashion, the challenge which they are trying to establish among the Muslim society. That's the main question.
Anybody else? Okay, first I'd like to thank all of you. This is the first lecture that I would have had, that I would have had at least 10 questions. I've never had this kind of. So it shows that mostly there's a lot of interest, and then secondly, it does appear that you really were listening to me. The funny thing is that all your questions, even though they all appear different, but they actually have the same base. The base is what I will start with. And the base follows a Yoruba statement that says, Amukan, Ewo. Just look at all the questions you've asked me. You understand? That's where to start from. Okay, let's go. Sure, so each of you, I ask you to repeat what you said, and then I'll address it, but just always look at it. Starting from my sister, I quickly Googled Pete Hegseth, and I'll read to you. Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News host and President-elect Trump's choice for Secretary of Defense, has multiple tattoos, including one, the Jerusalem cross on his chest. 2, the Latin phrase, those words, on his bicep. And then let me now tell you what they mean. The Jerusalem cross is on the center of his chest, is used by Christian pilgrims, but also linked to far right and Christian nationalist groups. Those words means God's willing, God's wills it, God wills it. Is a tattoo on his bicep. That's what I was telling you about. This phrase was a battle cry during the Christian Crusades and has been adopted by white extremist groups. The third one he has is kafir. I remember that word. It's an Arabic word that was written on his body, meaning infidel or unbeliever, which has drawn criticism from civil rights groups who interpret it as a sign of anti-Muslim hostility. Other tattoos include We the People, you understand, in script. Another one, 1775, in Roman numerals. Another one is a cross with a sword. Another one is a 13-star flag, which states represents his faith and support for the Second Amendment. So if you want to read more about it, just type in Google Pete Hegseth tattoos. It's a long story. So you see what it is I'm trying to say. Then your second question, okay. Your second question has to do with the Jalabi or Arabs. Oh yeah, I think let me make it worse for you. China is the Uyghurs. Abi, China is the Uyghurs. Negative is the Uyghurs. Is very bad. I told you I usually make this show. I used to say, and I think I counted those Muslim groups I used to say, and I'll say it to you so that you understand. I say, Allahumma, oh Allah, so please help our brothers and sisters, the Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Sudan, China, Kashmir, and Afghanistan. 10 countries. The China one is the Uyghurs. It's really bad. Very, very, very bad. You can just go and Google it. The Kashmir, that's the India one. In my estate, there's a brother. The brother says things are so bad in India for the Muslims that he doesn't have the feeling that he has a feeling that it's going to be like a genocide in India. And there's a reason for that too. Time will not allow me to. So some of these things we can discuss on the outside, but just for you to know. And it's purely political. The current leader in India was that Modi, Abi, this state, and he led the environment. And how can I win? So he just realized that there's a party they call the RSH, and one other one, they are the Hindu Ravashna, whatever they call themselves. So he just so he realized that the way he can win election is to heighten this into something. So that's how it all started. And it just led like that. And when they started, they decided, you want to know. India cannot be what it is today, but for the Muslims. Unfortunately, even though the Muslims are like 5% of the population, but they actually made India what it is today. So just for you to know that, the problem that is happening right now is also partially caused by a Muslim. Because the first president also of India was a Muslim, but it was by a Muslim. Because the first president also of India was a Muslim, but it was from Kashmir. So when they were breaking India into two, India and Pakistan, then there was the issue of Kashmir. So this guy was like, if they give Kashmir to Pakistan, then he is no more in India. And so it's almost like a curse that he gave the statement that like the Bafili, Jackie Palestine, Pakistan, Kashmir, Ashikwe for you kind of like. So that's part of it. Are you getting the problem? Now, so I've handled the India, the China one. Now you see the part of the Turkey. I will just say because Sherry, I was in Turkey 2011 and I was in Turkey 2015, and I noticed something that shocked me. In 2011, I was in a hotel called Marriott, those kind of 5-star hotels. So I wanted to pray, and I went to the reception, and I told them, where's the mosque, thinking that this is a Muslim. That was the first day I got there. I was directed to the underground. I can't remember whether it was third level or second level. That was where the mosque was. Then, when it was now Friday, I wanted to pray Juma. The young men that were there, I now told them, where's the mosque? I wanted to pray. They were all looking at me like, you young man, that was how, one of them had to eventually tell me, it's the old people that go and pray. So eventually, I walked an hour before I got to where the mosque was. That's how bad Turkey was. 4 years later, I think, was it that same year or 2 years before? That was when this guy became president. This current guy, Erdogan. 4 years later, when I got there, 2015, practically everybody was praying everywhere. And then the hijab became a normal thing. And that was just shortly after the coup. Do you get it? So you see, the truth of the matter is that you need to understand the history of Turkey. Turkey had almost totally lost Islam. Almost totally lost Islam. Because Kemal Atatürk that came after the Second World War, he wiped out the Muslim scholars. He blamed the loss of Turkey, which then was not Turkey. It was the Atatürk Caliphate. He believed that the reason why they lost was because of Islam. Are you getting? It was a general, so he thought this Islam is so what now happened is, and then Turkey has the power of the military, just like in Pakistan. The people that are running Pakistan are soldiers. You may have politicians, but you cannot touch those soldiers. Like it happened in Nigeria too. And it's even still to some extent. Can you touch Obasanjo? Can you touch Theophilus Danjuma? Can you touch Babangida? So you have to understand the politics of each one of all those places. So Turkey is stage by stage. Islam is still very delicate in Turkey, and everybody's eyes is on Turkey. And you see that guy who is the president, I only just have to pray and believe that it's sincere. Otherwise, he will look like a hypocrite. That's just the truth. Even got to sovereignty. So, and you see, in governance, there are some decisions you make. It's not necessarily that what you want to make. I'll give you a very good example. Mustafa Ali, may Allah have mercy on his soul. He was MD of Gobi, Abi. I have had a few other brothers like that who are MDs of their hospitals. All right? You will even get your salaries to pay your staff if you don't settle some people. Are you getting the point? Salary, I'm not saying if you don't settle some people, you will not get that. Not on top of you want to do development, whatever. So what is just making me to try and continue to manage with every that is I look at Turkey 2011, Turkey 2015, and what Islam has been doing in Turkey and the powers that are really trying to destroy Turkey. And so when I see those, contrasting decisions, I just say, oh, Allah, may Allah help them, may Allah help them. So go easy. And if we pray for him, Allah knows what it is. I hope I've answered your own question. So let me now start with number one. You yourself are the man. So, you see, in my own mosque, all these things that you see, these are the things we do in my mosque. So, what has to happen therefore is that we need to get Muslims who have reached to the community, whether as imams or lecturers or whatever, to be aware of what the situation is, and then they must engage their people. But what I also found is that when you have knowledge without good mind, and I'll give you a good example. It was important that during the youth of Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan, the Prophet had passed on. These are the Prophet's grandchildren. They said there was a time they were in a mosque, I don't know how it was in Kufa or wherever it was, in Medina, that there was one wise old man with a white beard. The man was giving lecture. And they were, Allah, Allah, and then they said the two were just looking at this man. And after I finished, I don't know which one of them, whether it's Hassan or Hussein. I don't know if you've heard that story before. The guy announced, the young people, they say, Sheikh, Allah Akbar, Alhamdulillah, thank you, your lecture is so wonderful, it's so wise, it's so good. But Emma Minister, touch me. I didn't feel anything. Also, if you remember our power, listen to most of all those lectures they are saying. What are they trying to do? They are trying to tell you they have knowledge. They are not trying to teach you the faith. They are not trying to pass across understanding to you. They just want to show you they have knowledge. You will be imagining somebody is giving lecture. Okay, as I'm speaking to you in English now, and I'll tell you, you see the proverbial adjective of that statement that I made. When you look at the interjunction of the coordinating adjective, am I not speaking? But is it making sense? The question here is that, am I in an English class? Or am I giving a lecture? Do you guys get the point? That is what I have noticed. And I've got what has that got to do with anything? And this happens to normal law when they came here, all those Arabia and all of that. Before then, neither our Babatiwa, it wasn't this one because they were not grounded in Arabic. Their own was just stories. Nígbà tí Wúdà tó ń bọ̀ láti Egypt lọ́wọ́ rí Bìlìkísù. I don't know whether you get it. So there's a difference between knowledge and information and communication. So because of time, you and I can discuss how to solve that problem. Because again, there was a day in our mosque What? You see, we can't. I mean, everybody has to go. You brought up something, and I'm just telling you. So the details of it is something can always be discussed. There was a day we also gave a sermon in our mosque on a Friday. I didn't know that this brother is one of the lecturers from the now Lagos State University College of Education. You understand? But that brother just came as soon as we finished. So I was like, you need a mosque like this. I said, what's the problem? He said, he has been hearing all the, I think it was even about Israel, Palestine, or Iran. I can't remember some of these kind of topics. He said, you mean there are Muslims that understand what is happening? I said, what's the problem? He said, but he has never gone anywhere they talk about these things. He started praying for all that. What will I say now? This is a lecturer, PhD. His own mosque, where is even coming from? He said they've never said anything like that. You know, we have to, so our we must educate ourselves, but we must purify our intentions. Well, it's not just the knowledge, it's also your intention. Like I'm telling you, you guys are saying I'm professor of clinical. My own was just kilo of week kashi. Well, that's all it was. And it just kept going, And one day I spoke somewhere and people thought I was a professor of what's it called now? Geopolitics, and I'm like, you don't come to the word professor or anything like that. This way, man, sometimes you remember when I send you guys some of this because it's so deep. I'm like, I mean the company I was just saying, I want your opinion on this. And sometimes I will insist, I said, you must watch this thing and get back to me because there's so much videos. People can just say, oh, I will later. But I will now insist, I'll tell him, I'll tell Shwema, I'll tell Damole, I said, I want your response. The one I sent recently to Damole, I watched it twice. You get what so I think that's how that is. Your second question was on what? You forgot it. Oh yes, they are all still linked. I just want you to just accept that for me. They are all linked. In the sense that Bosnia Srebrenica, that was just tribalism. And Joseph Tito. So the man just banded all sorts of people together, just like the way Nigeria is today. Nigeria's thing is not that bad, but it's similar. When they were going to form Nigeria, did they ask your opinion? There's Yoruba, there's Hausa, there's Igbo, there's all sorts of things. It's just that some fault lines are much deeper. If you go to northwest Nigeria or north central Nigeria, Sherry belt yẹn láti Benue, Nasarawa, Taraba, Adamawa, at least like Modakeke àti Ife. They have tribal cultural issues. But there are some people who are strategic, they will bring Christianity into it. Do you get what I'm saying? So the Bosnia Srebrenica thing is a tribalism issue. It's a Adajuilo, Dajualo, and they were all suppressed there under Yugoslavia. But as soon as they saw that this was going to break, some people were better than others. So that's how, and then some people are naturally evil people. You know, it's part of like what you say, you know, there's the main Dajjal, and then there's Dajjal, the different small Dajjals. So it's just like somebody like this Netanyahu. Yeah, you know, for yes, that is true. That's true. Well, again, like I said, you understand? Like I said, wide gone. But when you start narrowing it down, initially it will look like it's so wide. But I must say something to everybody here today. The affairs of the world at every place, just like this Lagos now, there are some few people who determine the affairs of Lagos. The same thing affairs of the Yorubas. If you remember this Yoruba, Yoruba nation, I want to call my choose around one. And so it will get bigger for the world too. But when you now tone down the matters of the world, you will find the Jews there. You get what I'm saying? And as at that time, when they are doing the peak decision, it's not because of Jews. It is because they want to dominate the world. But you know, when you want to rule any group of people, you bring your own people Tinubu is head of state now. Who are the people that are surrounding him? His own people. And then they will now be people, not just his own people, but people who either are subservient to him or believe in his philosophy. So there's this thing in the history and philosophy of the Jews where they are more inclined towards evil, control, damage. So you find them like that. That's why you have all these Pikachu, Palantir, all those guys. A number of those guys are Dajjals. They don't have, look at the Palantir guy. You even see the way he dresses. Don't be surprised if the guy is doing Baal worship. These guys doing this Baal worship, if you go and look at the Epstein file, and they kill children every day. I was reading an article that says over 145,000 children disappear in America every year, and they're used for worship. Are you aware of that? So, Sherry, I'm giving you a whole deep to be ashamed of. It's just so that's why I say that I'm going to go. So I hope I've answered the question. Then your whole question was see again, you don't get it at all. Sherry Protestants, right? They were all designed. And the simple answer, I told you that what did the Easter, there was this thing, Easter launch that Trump did. He said, we armed people to go and do that. So those things were not by the Iranians. Those things were plan of America and Israel. Yeah. With COVID.
That people get more violent. They predicted the time that violence will happen in certain countries that they mentioned.
I don't have.
Was our own supposed to get violent so that it's coming up?
I don't have enough. I don't have enough information about COVID for me to speak. But I will say that I have enough information to know that COVID, just like HIV, they have common. That's all I can say. But the extent of those things, I don't have enough information as yet. But if you also remember that when COVID started, Bill Gates' wife made a statement. He said, corpses will litter Africa. I mean, how would you know that? Do you get what I'm saying? And there was also a US parliamentary session. If I have to look at my library, I'll be able to find that video, hopefully, that they were telling you that they actually started and planned that they were going to wipe out 3 billion people from the world's population, and they are mostly going to come from Africa and Asia, because they consider that they are useless. You and I now, we're useless. So we're just excess to use. And Bill Gates is always featuring in it. And then you also hear about Monsanto. You read about Monsanto. We're all saying the same thing, But just like I said, I don't want to be a false preacher, and I don't like to say things I don't know. But I know that there are queries. Just like, okay, let me throw another one to you: autism. You guys have heard about autism, isn't it? And the way you understand it is the first, I knew about autism since my days in medical school in 85 to 90. I first knew about autism in 1987 or so when I was in clinical school. But I never saw any case until 2001. And it was only somebody very close to me, his son. And as at that time, the cases we started seeing, they were usually Nigerians whose children were born abroad. Do you get what I'm saying? And from that time up until 2012, I probably will hear one case in a year or two. But by 2012 or 2013, there was a month in February, I had 3 cases. That was when the alarm started ringing in my head. So I now contacted the first school for autism in Africa. It's in Cape Town. It's called Vera School for Autism. I now wrote to them that I wanted to come, and they said I should come. I was there for a week in November, and so they were very nice to me and all of that. Now today, every week I will have at least 2 or 3 cases of autism. In the last 2 years now, I have at least 150 cases of autism. Just on Thursday, I made a new another diagnosis. I didn't even go to clinic. I'm talking of my own private clinic. I'm not talking of the children. So it's an explosion. The number of cases of autism in America before 1950 was like maybe 1 per 1,000. By 1967, it had become 1 per 100. As of now in America, it's 1 in 30. Are you getting it? I mean, here in Nigeria now is going to be as bad as maybe 1 in 100 or 150. So the obvious thing is that something is going on. What is that thing? I will leave it like that until I have more information. People give all sorts of suggestions, but I don't speak to what I don't, particularly when it comes to, public and, there was somebody now, there was one of my junior colleagues, he's a consultant, somewhere in Benin. He made a statement because he was a pastor or is a pastor. So in the heat of the moment, he made a comment relating to that. They just blew it up. The guy almost went to jail. And so you don't speak to things like that unless you have definite information. So the information I'm giving you now is definite. The incidence of autism has gone up. Nobody can deny that. The explanation differ. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? So if you now want to ask what advice can I give you, I cannot say that publicly. I can only say that privately. I hope I've answered your question. So going to what he is saying, the truth is that you are assuming that those riots that happened in Iran, that they were internal. No, they were not internal, they were planned. Do you get what I'm saying? They were, so yeah. So, oh yes, it's just like Libya. I told you that, for example, I look at Syria, that the man that was eventually removed 2 years ago. That plan had been made as far back as 2006. Guess who did it? Guess who did it? Your friend, Peter. What's his name? Mubarak Obama. And there was a CIA project called Operation Timber Sycamore. So our people they are evil. And that's also again where, for example, when we are hearing about these things, Obama is a black man. Obama, because I remember I was in Hajj when they were doing that election. It was December 2000 and whatever it was. So a lot of people were a black man, this. The day he was sworn in, the following day they bombed Pakistan. The following day they bombed Pakistan. So everybody will story tells your own question is what? You see, my brother, again, some of us were just foolish people and were dishonest. I'm telling you, some their own problem is foolish, some their own is dishonest, some is both. You hear what Muslims will say, oh, they want to be part of community. Okay, Mecca is not a community. Nasfat is not community. Zumrat Islamia is not community. There are 1,001 Muslim communities. Forget about whether they are useful or not useful. So if a Muslim comes and says, the only reason why I'm in Rotaract, Lions, and all of these things is because I want to be part of a community, it's not an excuse. Are you getting what I'm saying? Now, number two, if you now say, not only do you have to be a community, I want to be useful. Shebi Nasfat has strategy units. Go and join that strategy unit and plan. Is Micah not, if not for Micah, we'll still be doing Muslim program inside one bush, one mosque inside one bush. Is it not Micah that changed the how what's it called? Where people are, how Muslims do things. So please, you see, just go and look at all those people who are joining all those. They are not being honest with you. That's just the truth. So those of them those who did it on the basis of ignorance or foolishness, but they are sincere. By the time you educate them, you see that they pull away. Do you get what I'm saying? So I don't bother myself about those kinds of people. Just leave that story. Afa, any question there? Louder. Give me your answer. No. You see, wallahi, doubt. we need to pray for the Iranians. So you see, this CIA and Mossad, those guys are deep, very, very, very deep. Don't you and I know, for example, that zina is bad? Don't we know? During the time of the prophet, they still caught a few people that did zina. Why? You see, there are some people, what they do in their life, they just sit down and they plan how to destroy certain people. And Allah says, what's it now, that we will reward you for your effort. Allah rewards everybody's effort. Bí mo ṣe jókòó yìí sí, if I decide that Tekoni, I'm going to destroy our business, and I sit down at it and I mean it, Ọlọ́run nìkan ló máa gbà. Do you get what I'm saying? So those people who run those CIA, Mossad, and everything, if you are looking for evil, evil. And if you are looking for people who have sacrificed, it is the Iranians. It is the strength of those Iranians that even make them, they are still existing till today. You see, I've thought about it severally, I've wondered. But one thing you can say about the Iranians, they are not stupid. That time they went to Islamabad to go and do that meeting with the vice president. Do you know what they did? There were 47 of them. Do you know the plane they went with? All those 165 or 155 children that died, they took their bags, they put it to remind themselves where they are going. 12 of those guys were PhDs. Are you getting it? Literacy rate in Iran is 95% female, 80-something% male. Their STEM courses are mostly women. So don't go there. Don't go there. And so you now say all those spies that are making it possible, that are exposing their people, they're human beings like me and you. May Allah not let our enemies find our weaknesses. Well, like that. As I am, I have my weaknesses. So far, I don't think I know what it is. So if I don't know, may none of you know, not to talk of my enemy. May I not know what your weakness is. And should I know, may Allah make me to help you, protect you against your weakness. Iranians are suffered. The last part I want to say relating to that is that the execution rate in Iran is high. It makes me feel very bad. But wọ́n sọ pé ẹni tí kinní kàn, ẹni tí bàtà ń ta lẹ́sẹ̀ ló máa mọ̀. You see, the damage those people who are spies are doing to the country is so high. The question you now ask yourself is, how can they solve the problem? Do you think by jailing them, ló máa solve it? I don't know whether you get. I don't like people dying. I don't like people. I can't even kill a chicken. I've never killed a chicken in my life. I've only successfully killed 2 rats by mistake. You understand? I was in bedroom, I saw a rat, I started running away. And the rat too was running away. I closed the door, bedroom the door, and then the dog killed the rat. So it's not me that killed the rat. I don't know whether you do you get where I'm going. So wallahi. So maybe sometimes they become unduly harsh. Do you understand? But you cannot blame the Iranians. They paid a very, very heavy price. That's just how it, unlike Saudi. Do you know that Saudi executions are probably higher than Iranian executions? And Saudi executions are political, just to safeguard their throne. So so I think I've answered your question. Okay, I can answer that question. You see, there are 2 answers to that. One part of it is human, and the other one is divine. You understand? The divine part, I alluded to it when I was telling you about the issue of the Malhama, Armageddon, Kabbalah, and Allah's, some of the hadiths of the Prophet. So, but what I also discovered with that one is that a lot of it depends on the scholarship of the people who are talking, also the intention, the sponsors of the people who are talking. So now for me, what I just tell myself is that on those matters, I just take everything they say with a pinch of salt. And I always retain myself to what that Allah's comfort. That what is beyond me, I don't want to worry myself. Otherwise, you get into paralysis. Are you getting it? So I'll then focus on the physical. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Summa turaduna ila alimul ghaibi wa shahada. Then return to him who has knowledge of what is hidden and what is exposed. And Allah says, Ujibu da'wata is at the hand. I'll answer the call of who calls me. So, and then he says, Allah does not let the work of any person go to waste. So, if therefore, whether it is Iran or Nigeria or Muslims in any matter, if you apply yourself based on the knowledge Allah has given you, Allah will support you. And then I'll come to a verse to conclude on that part. So, again, you see, you are also a victim of propaganda. I'm being honest with you. You see, these Americans, Mossad, propaganda. Yes, they have a lot of capability, but they tell a lot of lies.
Okay.
Yeah. Then, secondly, if you now look at Iran, the terrain of Iran, you'll be amazed. It shows you that there's a destiny to that nation. There's actually a destiny to that nation. Time will not allow me to go, but if you look at that terrain, just the same like Afghanistan. Do you know that there's no empire that has ever conquered Afghanistan? Are you aware of that? And then the only empire that's ever conquered the Persians is what? Islam. So that's where you now start to go to that area. Now, the final thing I want to say relating to that is that let me take you back to the Battle of Khandak, and then in Surah Tawbah, Allah says, Alladina yaqulu nasa inna nasa qad jama'u lakum fa'akshawhum fazadahum imanan faqalu hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله لم يمسسه سوء واتبعوا رضوان الله. Now, you see, that story had to do with, maybe you don't get it, there were 10,000 Arabs that were coming to fight the Muslims. They've never seen that kind of army in Arabia. 10,000. I'm not talking of nowadays that you have thousands and thousands. So if you hear that when they used to fight themselves in bed, they say 100, they are plenty. 50, they are plenty. The Arabs had to call all the tribes in the peninsula to come and fight the Muslims in Medina. So what now happened was that there were some few tribes who were not enemies of the Muslims, and they were not Muslims, but they were doing trade with the Muslims in Medina. So a few of them heard that the Arabs were gathering together, that they wanted to say, okay, this time around, just like America is doing now, we want to finish these Muslims in Medina. So they were the ones that now came to leak the secrets to the Muslims that, in the Nasa, they are gathering against you. Fear them. Just like the way America came with USS Pencil, USS Byron, USS Tebu, Nimitz class, R-70 something, fighter jet. Do you understand? One of those USS, now shit will chase them come out. Because Allah made it that some of the soldiers got very upset. You know what they did? They went and used their clothes to block the piping system of their toilets. So the toilets started pouring shit all over the place. You'll be amazed who Allah fights. You know that verse in the Quran? Allah says, nobody knows who are the soldiers of Allah except himself. So some of these things are really spiritual in a way. So he says, for akshawhum, fear them. So the Muslims, of course, when they were scared. How can we fight 10,000 people? That will also carry me to that battle, is it Qadisiyah or something, where the first battle Muslims, no, Qadisiyah was with the Iranians, Abi. The first battle the Muslims had against the Byzantine Empire. There were 10,000 Muslims against 100,000 soldiers of the Byzantines, and the Muslims won. That's where the second part of the verse, he says, the Prophet now gathered them together and said, who do you think? Do you think you are the ones who are fighting this war? And what did Allah do? Those people went to sleep, waiting that by the morning they will go and attack the Muslims. What did Allah do to them? he sent wind and scattered all of them. I don't know whether I've answered. So that's the way I can answer your question. Then I think your question was on hijab, Abi. Okay, what's the first one? I think I've answered the hijab one, but I didn't answer. Okay, I'll answer. There was the first one. Mm,
Why I asked that question because of my understanding that Palestine were the original people that
mm,
and information is like said, waiting. They were giving the Abrahamic Accord came into. So that was why I asked saying that for the Israelis, I believe that both of are real. And as such, that's why I do
What if I told you that the Palestinians are Jews? What will you say? If I told you that the Palestinians are Jews, what will you say? Mm. If I told you that the Palestinians are Jews, what will you say? You haven't answered my question. If I told you that the Palestinians are Jews, what will you say? You see, the history of that place is such as that you are made to believe that at the final expulsion of the Jews of the Jews in 70 AD by the Romans, that was what you hear the word Exodus, have you? That the Romans exterminated the Jews, and so they all left before they now came back today, and then you now have them, and that's what they call the Aliyah, which is called the return. But you see, in those periods of times when they were fighting all of those their wars, and it's not just in Jerusalem, even in all of the other places where they used to fight wars in those days. You see, when an army from a country comes or a people and attack the other people, they don't actually remove everybody. What they usually get rid of, either kill or enslave, are usually the leaders of those people. They are soldiers, they are politicians, they are businessmen, they are successful men. The farmers, the ordinary rural people in the villages, nobody touches those ones. But those ones just continue with their normal business. Are you getting? And they obey you. So as far as they are going, as far as those are concerned, soldiers go barak. Are you getting it? So those guys were always there. They have always been there. But some of over the time, they changed. They became Christian. They became this. Then they became Muslim. So they have always been there. And just to prove that to you, DNA studies, genetic studies, they found out that the current Palestinians, the Muslims in Palestine, because they became Muslims, they were Jews. The Muslims in Palestine and the Levant, Lebanon, and that area, when they now did their DNA, compared it with the DNA of when they did archaeology of those who died that were known as Jews, they found out that the match was like between 80 and 90%. So they actually were shocked to discover that these were the indigenous people. And then when they now did that of the Israelis, the ones that say they are Israeli, the best amongst them was 60 something percent. Majority of them, some of them were even 10%, 5%. That's why today the official policy in Israel, you don't do genetic studies. So I'm giving you this short answer. I can give you more detailed answer, but because of time, do you get it? So I just want you to understand that the story is not the way you understand it. It is more.
For Islam, or when Atiku for his 8 years as vice president did for Islam. So they are clear. You see, Atiku as vice president, when they do meetings, then they will now do Northern Caucus meeting, and after that meeting will be done in Hausa. I have a brother that was close to them. That caucus meeting will be done in Hausa. And then after they finish that one, when it's now 1 a.m., 2 a.m., they will now do another caucus meeting in full day. Because they are Arab, they are what they are Fulani. And then there's another caucus meeting which I'm not going to mention. The brother that told me that one, I don't want to speak about it. So what I'm just trying to say to you, my brother, is hypocrisy will happen. That's what it is. And you see, I'll give you a personal experience. I have related with government in Lagos State, and some things happen between me and government in Lagos. Let me just put it that way. Many years later, I now realized that I didn't know I was playing with fire. But you see, the funny thing is that it didn't matter because my intentions were there. And so it was Allah that was protecting me. To the point where there was a time some of the some of the Aspasen people who couldn't speak to me in my own presence, who were agreeing with me, yes, sir, doctor, that's how it is. As soon as I left, Ambassador came. They were now telling me, that useless boy, he came, he said, why should I just continue? Because he has related with me and he knew that I would never do what they said I did. Are you getting what I'm saying? Or is it the one I've had with you and all of that? And there was a meeting that was between Tinubu and there were some things I said to him. And it just ended like that. So when I look back at this, and there were some people that were usually present who come and give me feedback. And I realized that the only explanation is because I was being true and sincere. I didn't ask for anything from anybody. I will just tell you as it is. And when they are Yorubas, one thing I do with Yoruba people tell that, oh, we need my party on them. And that's what I used to do. Oh, we need my party. And so he knows I'm abusing him, but it's not my words. You can imagine a situation where somebody tells you, Moferi, you say, okay, sir. And then unfortunately it's 10 p.m. And the fellow now says, this is it. I will not tell him you are not coming. I said, Emma believes that he has balance of the video. Did I abuse? Yes. Am I the one that says so? But the truth of the matter is that what am I saying? And then the man replies me and he now says, so you are taking the one back. No, that's not what I told you. I said, I prefer that. What am I telling you? I don't know whether you. So what I find is that Allah gives the wisdom. Allah gives the guidance. When Musa, Allah sent to Pharaoh, what did Musa tell Pharaoh? Allah said, you said Aaron is true now. Aaron Mobo said so you go. That's the way me I see. Who is the last person? What was the question?
Yeah, may Allah reward our Sheikh. Please, can we do sort of cover for him? May Allah continue to expand it. Also, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate everybody. Someone want to laugh.
No, nobody will do for that place.
We are not born again.
Now, only people like women. I mean, Nigerians are expecting to slap you look like slap you. The which of that when you slap you 2 times.